you for that warm introduction and the opportunity to share time with your group today. Dusty, thank you as well. I know we haven't had the opportunity to share much time together, but appreciate the faith in our group and our mission here at Paladin Bridge. I guess to start, can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. Well, as you all well know, the technological world that we're in, it's like somebody always ends up being muted, and sometimes, to Lynn's point, that's us. So I'm glad you can hear me. She was not kidding. My name is Will Smith. So I catch a hard time every single day of my life, but it works well to be remembered. Lynn is correct. I have been in the financial world for 2 decades now, and have seen the real challenge that is facing families and individuals with the status quo when they're faced with a life-changing medical diagnosis. And it's something that, this, just to give you a little bit of backfill here, my story, in 2007, I got a phone call from my mom. And, I was in the middle of something. I think we were watching the ACC basketball tournament or something as a team. And she goes, "Hey, Will, it's Mom. Do you have a minute?" And I said, "Well, sure, Mom. Is it important?" And asking her that question, something I'll never, ever let myself live down. She was calling to tell me that my dad had been diagnosed with cancer. And watching the next 18 months of our life unfold and go through all of the trials and tribulations and the challenges that are facing the vast majority of people with the status quo right now is something that really never left me because of that personal issue. But I've also seen dozens of families go through this over the years. And, sometimes it's things like today's group with lung cancer, but there's, other cancers, there's ALS, MS, I mean, you name it. There's all these different things that can happen to us. And we'll talk through that in a few minutes. I'll share a video with you guys about why why there is a thing called Paladin Bridge and really share with you more about our mission here. But, the status quo right now, as many of you all have seen, is one that is very disjointed, very inefficient, and quite honestly can be stressful and expensive when families that are going to get their affairs in order have advisors working in multiple silos, right? So, you think about it where the banker doesn't talk to the attorney, who doesn't talk to the insurance specialist, who doesn't talk to the financial advisor. And somebody inevitably has to go from place to place to place and retell the story, 11 times and deal with this, it's almost this game of telephone as they go to say, okay, well, the attorney said we need to do this. So now we need to go talk to the financial person. We need to relay that to the Medicare expert or to our health insurance provider. And it just becomes this constant stress point. So we created this when a gentleman came and spoke to our firm 2 years ago from Transamerica, the large global insurer based out of San Francisco. And the gentleman was a retired military medical field doc. And he was part of their wealth and health initiative. And he shared with us that if someone's facing a cancer diagnosis and they go to a comprehensive care center, right? Think Duke, John Hopkins, MD Anderson, their survival rate increases by over 30%. And that was something that really hit home with me because my dad's path of care was somewhat disjointed until we finally came to Duke. And by that point, things had progressed a little too far. So it got me thinking. I'm like, all right, well, if the survival rate goes up by 30% at a comprehensive care facility, why couldn't we create something similar to that for the financial, legal, and estate side of things to help simplify life during complicated times? So I'm going to attempt to share a very quick video with you all. Again, it is technology, so bear with us, but we'll share this with you now.
What do you do when you're faced with a life-changing diagnosis? Not just you, but how does it impact those you care about? Paladin Bridge is the planning partner that simplifies life in complicated times. We help you plan for the financial, legal, and estate sides of life so you can get back to living it. By assembling a collaborative team specifically for you, we can get all of your affairs in order, keep your documents and plans up to date, and organize your support team, all within just 1 week. Why stress about the planning you need to do for your life when you should just be living it? Go to paladinbridge.com to learn more.
Perfect. Well, let me know if you have any trouble, okay?
I think we're back. Well, and I'll also walk you all through a brief slide deck that can help explain a little bit more about the normal way things go, and then what people have a chance to plug into with Paladin Bridge. So we'll walk through that, and then Lynn has been gracious enough to put together a laundry list of bullet points of some areas that she feels like would be pertinent to talk through today, and we can certainly to touch on some of those. So we'll go through this deck real fast and be right back. All right, so as I mentioned, when we created Paladin Bridge, we realized that everybody has this plan, right, for what we expect life to be like. You start off kind of up here at the top. We've got the little ducky. When we're born, we go to school, we get a job, we get married, we have kids, we retire, and then inevitably something happens, right? But it's not always on this perfect circular path, because life, as many of you all have experienced, as have I, life has no challenge throwing us a curveball. And when that happens, right, whether it's cancer or heart issues or Parkinson's or cognitive impairment, we need to plan, right? It's one of those moments where oftentimes we see that people don't really truly plan for the legal, financial, and estate side of things unless life forces our hand, right? So most of us probably didn't know much about group health insurance or company benefits until we got our first job. And then it was like, wow, we need to figure this out. Same thing with Social Security, Medicare. Until you're getting ready to retire, those things are typically on the back burner, right? So it's the same thing when life throws us a curveball with the possibility of a life-changing medical diagnosis. And during that time, it's all hands on deck, right? Family members, spouses, you name it, people have to kind of rally together. And oftentimes the path of care is the only thing that's really getting the attention. But the longer we kick the can down the road and don't face, again, the estate, legal, and financial things that are very important, that really impact families, especially the family dynamics, depending on how things are set up, it just becomes this more arduous problem that we have to deal with eventually. So we created Paladin Bridge to basically help people have that one point of contact, right? To help get all of these items coordinated, collaborated upon, and to provide a polite accountability, as I like to call it. That's code for leadership, to help the planning team get their stuff together so they can get our clients what they need. And what I mean by that is, at PB, at Paladin Bridge, as Spencer and I like to call it, we are happy to serve as the one planning team, right? To get the attorneys together, to collaborate with the tax professionals or the insurance professionals. But what we often see is that people already have a team. So, but oftentimes that team is disjointed, right? So they're not working together. So again, when we found out that there was a chance to increase the probability of success for someone's mortality if they went to a comprehensive care facility, we said, why don't we do the same thing, but again, with more of the side of the house that I'm familiar with a background in estate planning and financial planning, investments, all that good stuff. So when people do choose to work with us, there's an initial meeting that follows what we call our uptake form. The purpose behind the uptake form is to help folks that haven't dusted off their estate documents in a long time really get down to the brass tacks of what needs attention. So the hope, and we recreated this with an attorney we have locally, and she basically said, hey, well, here's the things I need. Like if a family needs to get their wills, power of attorneys, all that stuff together now, this is the information I have to have. And we created an uptake form now so that people can avoid multiple trips to the attorney's office. They can get everything done immediately, tell us about their goals and intentions for where things are and where they want things to go. And then after that, we'll set up again our initial meeting. During that initial meeting, that's where we determine if and how we can be of service to someone. If we can, and we determine who needs to be responsible for what and when, right? Think powers of attorney, things of that nature, then that's where we'll create an opportunity to get together with the family or with however the dynamic is established for what we call our summit meeting. And that's where we come together and say, okay, here's what we've heard is important. Here are next steps. Okay. Now it's time to go. We want the gap between the summit meeting and the implementation meeting to be inside of 1 week. That way people can get back to living their life as our video said. So once things are implemented, right? Think that once assets are titled appropriately, wills, trusts, powers of attorneys are put into force. A true survivor plan is set up for a surviving spouse, for example, or that we've reshuffled a couple of things to provide a more advantageous access to capital should insurance not cover something. Then now we have a game plan in place. All right. One of the secret sauces I feel like though to Paladin Bridge is our ongoing service system. And the purpose behind that is that, once a plan's in place, oftentimes it's immediately outdated because life keeps changing. So we wanted to create a way that instead of what happens, and I'm sure there's some folks who would agree with me on this call, there are many, many times when estate documents get executed and they go in a drawer and they just begin to collect dust. What we're hoping to do is find out who that one person in the family is that needs to be the liaison. And we set up a communication system with them so that if someone has an early Alzheimer's diagnosis, that we can stay in touch and we can know when we need to start looking at getting more serious with, having different things become part of our immediate game plan, right? So it becomes this kind of ongoing, consistent communication opportunity for everybody. And they have a one-stop shop that is a lot better than, again, like, okay, we have a question. Is it legal or is that more of a financial question? Do we go to the bank or is that something that we need to talk to, fill in the blank with? You have one-stop shop. And that's what we're trying to create for folks that, we serve here at Paladin Bridge. One of our taglines is we feel like everybody makes a pact in life, right? To be a good husband and provider to a family, to be a great mother and nurturer to their kids. Our pact with the families we serve is that the opportunity itself is going to be very personal. We do not want anyone to ever feel like a bank customer. I hate that term. If I'm a customer somewhere, I'm going to be at the grocery store, not at the bank, right? So I want it to feel personal. I want people to understand that they're heard, that they're not on some sort of, kind of factory line, just moving through a process. They truly are cared for. There's going to be some accountability, right? Often I'm told some of the positive feedback I've gotten now is that, folks say, hey, you know what, you're pretty good at telling me what I need to hear, not always what I want to hear. And, I'm not saying that there's any type of militancy to that, but it's just an authentic kind of progressive leadership approach that we take here to tell people and their advisory teams, hey, this needs to get done in the next 48 hours, or this needs to get done by the end of the week. We're huge into collaboration. Again, the old saying that, two minds are better than one. That couldn't be, more accurate from an estate planning, financial planning, retirement planning, survivor planning standpoint. Because if your attorney and your advisor know each other well and they set things up appropriately, the planning's that much better. And then obviously, like I said, time sensitivity is everything. The sooner we can get this done, the sooner we can get folks in a situation where they feel confident and everyone's on the same page, then we've really completed something and gotten it off the plate of folks who would rather be dealing, quite honestly, with figuring out their path of care and spending the best days they have left with the people who matter the most to them. So instead of having the normal setup, which is fragmented planning, accounts scattered everywhere, no idea where legal documents are, an uncertainty level as far as how insurances work, we've created a system to help streamline this, get very clear on the individual and their family situation, and provide them, again, that one-stop shop to help them get the clarity that they need. So that's our little slide deck, if you will. I'll go back now to my shining face. Hi. So Lynn had asked that we go through several bullet points with you all today, some areas maybe that were top of mind, or that there were consistent areas of questions, et cetera. So we'll kind of start from the top there, if that's okay with everybody. I think one of the top bullet point items was financial planning. And I will say that, financial planning is exactly what it sounds like, but a whole lot more. Your financial planning side of the house, that's truly a roadmap, right? And every single situation is unique. We use the term here a lot that every person has their own unique fingerprint. Everyone has their own unique financial needs, right? So just like if someone lives alone and they're going through a very tumultuous time, their situation's a lot different than a family who, let's say mom and dad live in Durham, North Carolina, their daughter lives in Texas and their son lives in Colorado. The son is, barely self-sustainable, and the daughter has her life together, but she's got a family and a business that she runs. Ultimately, the responsibilities are going to fall on her, right? So how does she understand how the financial planning side of things works for the family? How can she be connected with the point of contact for the family? That's something that we take near and dear to our heart, here at Paladin Bridge, is to make sure that those folks are part of the process and really cared for. So every situation is unique, bottom line, but making sure that we focus in on the intention at the most important time possible is what we try to make the most focal point there. Estate planning, one of the biggest misconceptions I feel like when you hear the term estate planning is that people think it's for rich people. Financial planning and estate planning are for everybody, right? Estate planning is basically the way that your assets and the things that you've accumulated over time are going to pass down. And I will say that what's important, and this will be a nice segue into the next point, is assets will pass via will, but they also pass via contract. And this is something that we've seen completely blindside people before, is that assets that pass via contract, right? Think insurance, like life insurance or annuity contracts or what have you, they have beneficiaries listed on them. Very rarely are those beneficiaries reviewed. And just like we talked about the estate planning documents sitting in a drawer gathering dust, we see the same thing happen with old life insurance contracts or annuity rollovers or what have you. There is no way of contesting that beneficiary designation. It trumps the trusts, the wills, everything, because it literally just says that this person is going to be my beneficiary. So we've seen ex-spouses get benefits, and we've just seen a ton of things happen that weren't the wills and wishes of the individuals, because again, they get caught up in this firestorm, this tornado of, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with life coming at me 100 miles an hour now because of what the doctor came down the hall and told me. It's important that they have someone come in and help them dust all this stuff off and make sure that it's all set up per their wishes. So there's just as much in estate planning as there is beneficiary reviews. The other side of estate planning that's extremely important when facing a life-changing medical diagnosis are your powers of attorney. And there's really two key powers of attorney. There is your healthcare and your durable power of attorney. You may hear these terms just to kind of help give you some industry jargon. That way it doesn't surprise anyone or doesn't come across the wrong way. You'll hear those used, they're called proxies. So you're basically talking about your healthcare proxy or your durable proxy. All that basically means is that you've got somebody designated that can make decisions on your behalf legally if you can't. So healthcare is pretty self-explanatory, right? And we do see, again, if I'm going through to Lynn's point, she's like, hey, if you got best practices for everybody, throw these out there. One of the biggest best practices we can see with your healthcare power of attorney is to get it in a digital fashion. Because we have seen horror stories where something happens to someone, the spouse shows up at the hospital and they need to be making decisions right now. And they're like, the doctor's like, hey, who's the power of attorney? And spouse rolls in, I am. They're like, great, show me your power of attorney forms. And they're like, I don't have it, it's at the house. They can't listen to your requests at that point, right? But if you've got it on your phone or you've got it set up in some sort of online secure encrypted vault, that is a fantastic way for you to save the potential heartache of a situation like that. So highly encourage you to have a healthcare power of attorney on you, especially now that we've all got, everybody and their brother has one of these things. That helps tremendously to help keep your situation one that's a little less potentially hectic should something happen. The other one, your durable power of attorney. I remember when I was going through some of my licensing classes, I was like, durable power of attorney. Was it just mean I can carry it around? What does that mean exactly? All a durable power of attorney really means is that it's financial. Okay, that just means that you can help make decisions on someone's behalf from a financial perspective, right? So we deal oftentimes with daily money managers or financial advisors that are doing retirement distributions or what have you, kids that need to determine where money's going to come from if insurance doesn't cover something, right? That's where a durable power of attorney is vital. And that's something that obviously, you need to keep up to date. And the person that's going to have the reins on that, they need to know that that's going to be their responsibility. Shameless plug, that's an awesome opportunity for them to talk to someone like us, because that's the communication that we would have, is to say, okay, now that we know you can make decisions or that you need to be in the know with how the financial situation goes around here, here's the way things are set up. And then chronologically speaking, here are the different buckets of money we would dip into to pay for certain expenses that might not be covered by Medicare or, someone's health insurance. That kind of is an interesting segue into disbursement items and buckets. What we see a lot is that, a family's going through this, and let's say that a bill shows up and they've got a $8,000 expense. There's no rhyme or reason oftentimes with where that money comes from. And that's, that to me is something that with the right relationship, you can really make more strategic decisions with where the funds should come from based on the actual situation at hand. Because again, everybody's unique, right? Once you hit age 72, there are your required minimum distributions that you have to take out of your retirement accounts. There could be some highly appreciated stock positions that if we plan things appropriately, then we can take them and pay only long-term capital gains rates as opposed to ordinary income. There are different buckets of money people have access to that they haven't really thought were even available. Things like home equity or pledged asset lines, right? If they have brokerage accounts, there's all these different things that folks have access to, but oftentimes they just default to pulling money out of savings. And that's okay, but you can set yourself up to have, a situation down the road where if you pull too much from savings and now you got to replace that with IRA money, you've got to pull out $40,000 to net 30 to replenish savings. There's just some small savvy things that you can do along the way to help stretch dollars. And again, make the decisions that need to be made in the most informed way possible. And your durable power of attorney is someone that we would certainly partner with to help out there, as well. Let's see, on our list. Insurances, there's a lot of different things that pop up insurance wise. I figured today we would talk briefly about, there's accelerated death benefits on life insurance. I figured we talk a little bit about long-term care. It's something that a lot of folks have, but they don't know when, where, and how to access those benefits. So I will say, full disclosure, Lynn told me this was going to be recorded, so I can only get so finite with the actual things that we're claiming here, because carriers are different, right? States have different rules for their insurance companies. But I broke out my life insurance policy as an example, and there's an accelerated death benefit component to it, right? So if Will Smith becomes terminally ill, my wife actually can pull down the death benefit on my insurance while I'm alive without having to dip into, full disclosure, I'll be 41 next month, right? If, let's say that my savings weren't very high, but I had money in IRAs and 401ks. If she had to dip into that money, it's taxable and there's a 10% penalty. Not to mention that since I'm in my 40s, I'll pass away. She'll probably still be around. She's also shortchanged the money that she would have to live on down the road from a retirement standpoint, right? So if she was going to get the death benefit anyway from my life insurance, why not get it now, right? And use it for things that could help make the situation easier, and or help pay for bills that, wouldn't jeopardize credit or cause her to have to sell off assets if the stock market had bottomed out or something like that, right? We saw some of that back in 2008 when people had to make tough decisions and the market's down and real estate was down. If anybody remembers back when that was, I feel like real estate's going to the moon right now. But it's one of those things where when you need to pull from something, you just need to know what all the options are, right? Because the death benefit on your insurance is static. So but each one's different. I figured I would just read mine to you all just to give you an actual example. Based on the death benefit that I have, I can access 50% of it while I'm alive, as long as a medical professional has deemed that I'm terminally ill. Okay. With this contract, that means that I need to be within 1 year of passing away. I can't make a claim for under $10,000. So it's going to need to have been something that's accrued and become an issue financially. And that it does, again, pull down the death benefit. But right now, I'm not going to bore you guys with the Internal Revenue Code for this thing because it's like 8 letters long. But basically, back in 1986, they determined that it would be tax-free for my wife should something happen. So there is an opportunity with that insurance policy. And most policies have that accelerated benefit rider to it. But what I would suggest you do when you have your insurance policies, or I would suggest this for anybody, is take a look at it, right? I mean, most of the times these things sit in a drawer and they just collect dust. So if you dust it off and kind of, hey, intentionally, what am I trying to do when I look at this thing, right? I mean, I know how much the death benefit is and I know how much the premiums are. That's normally the deal. But the other thing I would encourage people to do is run what's called an in-force projection on it to determine how long it's going to last and how it's going to perform over time. Better understand, if it's term insurance, how much longer is it going to last in the way of years? Is there a conversion feature to it, right? So when I say conversion, what I mean is that instead of a policy being a term policy, you can actually convert it to a permanent contract. The benefit in that would be, let's say that you get the unfortunate medical diagnosis and it's year 9 of a 10-year term policy. Well, not all, but most term policies have a conversion feature where you could turn the policy into one that's designed to last forever. And yeah, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but economically speaking, there's a tremendous benefit to doing that, right? So it's one of those things where maybe it has an accelerated benefit. Maybe we can figure out a way to create a permanent contract, but just eliminate some of the surprises. So be intentional when you open these up to determine what you have, what it can do for you. And those are things, again, that we try to help people do all the time. If we switch over to long-term care, long-term care is very near and dear to my heart. when I graduated Hampden-Sydney College in Virginia back in 2002, my grandfather had lost our family's biggest asset several years before. And, I remember when I guess I was a freshman in high school, my mom said, yeah, we're going to have to auction off the farm. And I thought to myself, like, awesome. No more throwing hay bales, no more forking calf stalls. This is great news. You grow up a little bit, right? And I grew up and realized, like, man, this is not good. Like, why did we have to do that? And basically what happened was my grandfather developed Parkinson's in aggressive form, and he obviously couldn't run the farm anymore. And it's pretty expensive, to pay for that. So I found a company to come work for that was doing long-term care coverage. So I had a good story to tell, and obviously, wanted to try to help a lot of people. But so I've worked with long-term care policies for almost 2 decades. And man, I have seen the industry change dramatically over 20 years. Standalone long-term care insurance was the deal back in 2001, 2, 3. And then, we got into some periods of time where interest rates bottomed out. The companies couldn't maintain the promises on the benefits growing. So premiums started going up, and then all of a sudden these hybrid contracts come out, and basically society's like, all right, we're over this. It's so confusing. It's hard to believe, what we have. And, my mom and dad's premiums have doubled, things like that nature. So if you have a long-term care contract, or if you're looking into one, I will say there's a couple of key things to take into consideration. There are 4 main variables that are associated with long-term care. That is how much they're designed to pay out on a weekly or monthly or daily basis, how quickly those benefits will rise to keep up with the rising costs of 70 million baby boomers continuing to age, how long you have to wait to access benefits, right? It's called the elimination period. It's a fancy term for deductible. And I'll come back to that in a minute, because that's the number one point of heartburn for people that I've worked with, that we've worked with over the years, is understanding how that works. And then finally is how long does it pay once something happens, right? So how much does it grow to keep up with inflation? How long do we have to wait to access it? And then how long does it pay out? Again, the biggest thing that we've seen people have challenges with over the years is filing a claim, right? And this to me is just as intentional as dusting off a life insurance contract is dusting off long-term care or even disability, is understanding if I do have to file a claim, what goes into it, right? So that it's not just this, stressful point of, getting the insurance company on the phone and not knowing necessarily what you're getting into. With long-term care, and again, here's my full disclosure point. The vast majority of contracts, you have to have something happen that is associated with 2 of your 6 activities of daily living, right? So there are 6, and we all do them every single day and take them for granted. Eating, bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, which is moving around, and maintaining continence. Anytime you need help with 2 out of those 6, and it looks like it's going to last 100 days, that's when you file a claim on your long-term care, okay? The cognitive impairment side of the house can circumvent some of those claims rules, but the biggest thing that I've seen, and I lived this myself when my dad was having a knee replacement, I thought, hey, if dad's gonna have a knee replacement, this was back in 2004, I was like, let's go ahead and knock a few days off this deductible period, this elimination period. So I called up, it was John Hancock at the time. I called up John Hancock, and they said, don't even bother. They're like, normally people will be back to work within 4 to 6 weeks after a knee replacement. Sure as anything, my dad was back to work within 4 weeks. So it needs to be something that looks like it's gonna last 100 days before it's worth filing a claim. And there needs to be 2 of those 6 activities of daily living or a cognitive impairment. So again, just as a best practice or just a kind of note to self, guys, that's one thing that we've seen that's that we've just seen over the years that something that folks need to be aware of when it comes to long-term care. Where are we next on our list? I think we're down to thinking outside of, I don't know. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's pretty good. I mean, we're at 12:42. Lynn had asked that we save some time for Q&A. I'll say, and Dusty, I apologize. I do see a hand up. Do you, Lynn, do you want to allow her to ask a question and chime in with the group here?
Yeah, that would be great. Go right ahead. And actually, if anyone else has a question, please feel free to go ahead and raise your hand and jump in. But Dusty, go right ahead.
Well, I just, when you talk about the insurance and collecting on a portion of it when you have the terminal illness. And a couple of thoughts came to my mind. One, I was surprised to hear you say that your policy would allow you, that would allow your wife to actually cash in on that. And I was surprised it wouldn't be the actual policy holder. So that was one thing I wanted to ask you about a little bit. And then the other thing is, so a friend of mine, she's a stage 4 lung cancer patient, and maybe 10 years ago, you know, she wouldn't have survived as long as she has survived, but now she's on targeted therapy. And she actually did speak to her doctor about the possibility of doing just that, you know, collecting on the life insurance so they could then make the investments and so on. But the doctor said she wasn't comfortable doing that. And it's a thing where we all want to believe and hope for the best, and yet it's sometimes really tricky and morbid to say, okay, I've got, you know, 6 months or a year or whatever, and I'm going to accept that and work with that. Would you mind addressing that?
Happy to. And I please forgive me if I was, you know, potentially not quoting exactly how I should. When I'm talking about my policy, what I'm talking about is our family. I would be the owner on the policy, Dusty, so the funds would come in here, but then obviously my wife would be able to use them if I was in a situation where I just didn't have the energy, the wherewithal, you know, the mental capacity to handle it. So what I mean by that again is the funds would come through to our family, not necessarily to someone else, because if my beneficiaries across the country, I don't think they're going to send a check to California if I'm in North Carolina. So the other piece on it, you know, you're right. I mean, there's an art and science to this stuff, and it's tough because if you're a doctor, there's a really fine line. I mean, they're in one of the most sought after fields from a litigious perspective that are out there. And, you know, for them to kind of quote unquote stick their neck out and verify that someone is, you know, quote unquote terminal, when, I mean, the doctor's probably fighting just as hard as they are to a certain extent, right? If they truly love what they do and they truly are trying to serve the population, which I think, you know, 99 out of 100 of them are. So it is tough, right? I mean, there's a little bit of a dance you have to do there, but there's also that like, hey, it's time to get real moment, you know, to your point, where you have to face, you got to face the situation. And that would be one where it would probably take a little bit of, you know, pushback to the doctor and say, hey, you know, I appreciate your optimism or the path of care and the confidence in, you know, new therapies and all that good stuff. But, you know, for our family's well-being, you know, we need this money now. And that's, again, it's an interesting dance to dance there, but that is, it's probably about the best I can do as far as addressing that, because each situation truly is unique.
Any other questions? Yes, Sue, go right ahead.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have a question about Paladin Bridge. Is this an all or nothing kind of thing? In other words, can people use part of your services if they are, you know, really in touch with maybe their lawyer or with their financial planner, but, you know, maybe just feel that they need portion of what is, do you operate in that manner, or is it pretty much, your company for everything?
No, that's a fantastic question and a very pertinent one. We're happy to serve as the resource, but again, as I mentioned earlier, we're also happy to try to jump in and really be that ringleader, that quarterback, because it's one of those things where, and I deal with this now, but I mean, it's one of those things to where if a family's uncle works in finance, or their cousin is an attorney, and they know that if they blew up that relationship, church was going to be awkward every Sunday. We're definitely not trying to do that, right? So really, from our perspective, when we have that initial meeting with the people who matter, the family, the advisors, and all, it kind of helps sift out who all needs to be involved and to what extent we are going to be either really running with it or really trying to help put things together. And I would say that it's probably 50-50 in that regards, because a lot of times people have a planning team and they're happy with where things are for them right now from a maybe they just updated their estate documents 2 years ago, and they're just like, hey, I just need somebody to come in now and really keep everything together and give us that one point of contact. So it's very fluid. It doesn't have to be a square peg round hole situation ever, if that makes sense.
It does. Yes.
Thank you for the question.
Will, I have a couple of questions for you from other members that can't be here. I know one of my things was about thinking outside the box, looking for funds that you don't know you have. I mean, I will be honest, I was going through a bunch of old papers this summer, and I found $13,000 in a retirement fund that my husband swore up and down. He's like, oh no, we transferred that over. And I reached out to them, and we had not transferred that over. So, I mean, is there anything that we, any other ways that we can like look for funds if for people who are dealing with extreme medical bills, that either one, they didn't have insurance at the time, or their insurance didn't cover it all, or if they're looking for treatment that's not covered by insurance. What are some suggestions on looking for money outside of your normal? I know you mentioned home equity, which I thought was great, because I'll be honest, that hadn't even occurred to me. What are some other possible avenues that you might suggest to a client?
Absolutely. I mean, the bottom line is just don't leave any stone unturned, right? But sometimes you don't know what stones might have something underneath them. You've got, like you just mentioned, home equity is one. Obviously you need to speak to a very qualified professional from a banking standpoint to start, going down that path, especially if there's a potential surviving spouse. There are reverse mortgages. They get kind of this negative rep because people don't necessarily understand them. Again, you need to speak to someone who's very qualified. There's also pledged asset lines, Lynn. A lot of times we talk to clients and they've got a brokerage account, with wherever, Bank of America or Morgan Stanley or wherever, and they're like, well, we prefer not to have to sell these stocks. We've held them since 2000, and maybe they're not wealthy, but they say, hey, we've got $200,000 in this account, but it's only a $50,000 basis, right? Where if we go start selling these, then it's going to trigger taxes and all this other stuff. A lot of these companies will have what's called a pledged asset line, where you can actually treat it just like a home equity line of credit, but it's on your investment account. I will say that if your insurance policy maybe doesn't have an accelerated benefit rider, or if you're, like I said, like if the life insurance doesn't have that for whatever reason, sometimes there are loans on cash value that you can take. And as long as you manage that appropriately, right? I mean, there's gives and takes to that too, but there's access to funds there that, sometimes people think they have to just cash out an insurance policy. And that's, then all of a sudden, it's kind of a double whammy. It's like, I've seen folks have to do that where they cash something out and it's $30,000 of cash value, but now they lost $120,000 death benefit, which is so sad when they really didn't need, maybe they could have loaned out $20,000 and maintained the integrity of that death benefit, what was left of it. for a surviving spouse, or just legacy planning, or, whatever was important to them. Those are a couple that come to mind. I would think that, between that and really just, and again, I don't want to try to get too far outside the box here, but I mean, I think every state has a website you can go to see if there's any, quote unquote, lost property. I think that if you do a kind of an internal family audit, like you just did, find 13 grand, it's like, where have I worked and where did I consolidate accounts and did I do that rollover? That's important too. I think that, and then, from there, I guess you just have to get creative based on, the family dynamic, what's available through everybody else's, means and all that good stuff. But so.
Great suggestions. Thank you. That is a good list. I do have one more question for you from another member asking about disability insurance. What do you know about? I mean, I guess not what you know, but what about disability insurance? How would someone access that, or how important is that?
So there's a couple of schools of thought there, right? There's what's part of the entitlement program, right? Like Social Security disability. That program is pretty universal for folks. If you look at disability insurance, there's really two ways that's cut. And again, I'm trying to throw the full disclosure up there on all this jazz because it's different per state. But the lion's share of those plans are either going to be employer-based or individual. Okay, and that's where if you don't know whether that or not your plan, you took it from your employer and now it's yours, it was portable. You need to look in the definitions on this stuff, because there are big surprises that could be waiting there for you in the way of taxes. Normally, if you have a disability plan through your employer, just like health insurance or other benefits, the company subsidizes part of that. If that subsidization is taking place, then if you're disabled and benefits are paid out, you're taxed on them. If you pay for them individually, right, outside of your employer, or maybe you took it from your employer and it reclassified into an individual plan, personally owned plan, those benefits are tax-free in most instances. So if you're talking about $5,000 or $6,000 a month potentially of a disability income benefit, we'll just use 5,000 as the number. There's a big difference between 5,000 tax-free and 5,000 taxable, right? If your spouse is also working, and depending on what type of tax bracket you're in, if Washington D.C. can ever get things straight, we'll know what this new tax plan is going to look like. That's going to play a big role into how we serve the families that we're fortunate enough to help out too, because who knows what tax brackets are going to look like going forward. So those are some big things. I will also say on disability, whether it's short-term or long-term, plays a role. Just like I talked about with long-term care, there's a waiting period on most disability coverage. It's important for the family to know that. When my dad was first diagnosed with cancer, he wasn't disabled, right? I mean, it was a situation where he was still doing okay. But we probably should have known, hey, within 90 to 180 days, things are going to get a little more dire around the Smith house. It would have made sense, or it would make sense for another family to look at their financial planning and say, okay, how are we going to bridge that gap if they're not working until the plan kicks in? And then once it kicks in, just like long-term care, how long is it going to pay until it is exhausted? Some of those plans have an automatic age 65 or age 67 length to them. Some of them on an individual basis only pay out for 2, 3, 5 years. So I think, again, that intentionality, that hey, let's get serious about what we have. Let's dust it off. Let's do the heavy lifting up front, get it done inside of a week. That's why, we really try to push to get this stuff done so that the family, then they know what they have. They have a planning team in place that's collaborating, and they can just focus on getting better and taking the stress out of, learning the hard way that, one of their insurance policies, assets, et cetera, is not going to work out the way that their expectations were originally set.
Well, thank you. Excellent explanation. I do have one more question for you from someone here. They'd like to know the difference between a beneficiary, I guess a beneficiary contract and a will. What is the differences there?
Yep. So your will is for what's called real property. And oftentimes when that term's thrown out, real property, people think of real estate. Real property, or it could be all sorts of different things, right? It could be business entities, it could be stocks, it could be bonds, it could be, you know, your home, rental property, all those things. They typically will pass into your estate and then via your will to whomever they're designated. An actual beneficiary designation is typically on insurance, right? So that's where, you know, if a beneficiary is, if let's just say as an example, like, you know, you found that $13,000. Let's say that instead of $13,000 in an IRA, you found a $125,000 life insurance policy that you'd forgotten about. All right. Let's say that life insurance policy was from 20 years ago. And in a previous life, you were married to Jim and now you're married to Gary. Well, if you never dusted it off and Jim is still the beneficiary, even though all of your estate documents and everything says Gary's my guy, my life has been better since Jim with Gary, Jim's still going to get the money. And it's heartbreaking. And, you know, again, it's one of those situations that you hate to ever see, but, you know, sometimes people turn a blind eye to what they have or don't, you know, keep that organization meter, you know, running at a 9 or a 10. So that's something that we see. So the beneficiary side of the house is typically more insurance oriented. There are certain income products that have beneficiaries on them, you know, as well.
Appreciate the opportunity to serve your community here at Live Long. So like Lynn said, I've been an independent insurance broker. I know I don't look that old, but I have been doing this since my senior year in college. So I started as an administrator for an insurance brokerage company, ran my own business for 2 years underneath them, and then founded Safe Harbor. That was in Wilmington, North Carolina, and now I live in Oak Ridge. So we kind of serve the triad primarily. So just the disclosure on the front end, I'm also an independent licensed financial advisor. That's through True Advice. So there's 2 separate companies going on. But I want y'all to know that I take a financial approach to the insurance, because I think a lot of times, especially when we're working and all that, we pick our health insurance based on what we can afford or what we think our health picture is going to look like. And what I want to encourage y'all with today is let's kind of flip that mindset of anytime you're looking at an insurance product, what you're doing is transferring risk to an insurance company. You're saying, okay, insurance company, I'm going to enter into a contract with you where I'm willing to pay a monthly premium. That's my end of the deal. And you, insurance company, your end of the deal is to pay my claims based on the contract that I pick with you. So it's a little more contract oriented, but I'm going to try to make it as fun as possible for you guys. So what I thought, I've always said slides don't stick, but stories do. So I'm going to use a fictitious story about my dad. So my dad has not been diagnosed with lung cancer, but what I would like to do is use him as an example and then kind of superimpose what some of y'all are experiencing based on a situation we can kind of play out with him. So my hope is to only spend about 30 minutes with this, but the idea is taking my dad through being employed, being diagnosed with lung cancer, to what healthcare decisions and transitions he needs to make into entering Medicare and what those decisions look like 65 plus with Medicare. So if y'all are okay, can everybody hear me okay that can see me? Perfect. I've got a big old fan above my head. I'm like, there's no way they can hear me above the fan, but we'll try to make this as fun as possible. So let's take my father. Let's say he's 58 years old. He's working, he's employed, and he is diagnosed with lung cancer. So he's immediately going to turn and look to his health insurance policy. We know medical bills are coming. So I think the easiest way to kind of boil down making a healthcare decision for you folks is let's look at 3 things. The mind is really good at grasping 3 things. We get to 4 and 5, forget about it. My wife sends me to the grocery store. If there's 4th items on there, I have a written list. 3 I can do, 4 I forget. So when it comes to health insurance, let's look at 3 things. Premium. How much are you paying per month? That's your end of the deal on the contract with the insurance company. You're required to pay a monthly premium, and how much are you paying? Because we want to know, what are you buying in return for that dollar? And we're going to see that in 2 ways. The insurance company is going to have a deductible, and they're going to have a max out of pocket. So your premium that you pay buys you some protection. So think, I'm giving premium, I'm receiving financial protection. And that comes through your deductible and your max out of pocket. Simply put, your deductible, you are responsible for 100% of the cost until you meet your deductible. You have $1,000 deductible and a $500 medical bill, you pay $500. You have $1,000 deductible and you have a $2,000 bill, you're going to pay the first $1,000, and then the next 1,000 will have some sort of co-insurance. So that's going to be 80-20, 90-10, where the insurance company is helping you with these medical bills. Now, the max out of pocket, this comes into play when you've spent up to your max, and then the insurance company is going to cover all the expenses thereafter. So same scenario, I've got a $2,000 medical bill. I spend my $1,000, I pay the first $1,000, that is my deductible. I have another $1,000 that I owe. So that's going to be some sort of 80-20, 70-30, meaning the insurance company pays 80, you're responsible for 20%, up to $5,000. Once you have physically spent $5,000, that plan would then pay all the remaining charges. So if your medical bill is $10,000, you're going to be responsible for the first $1,000. The next $4 will be kind of a co-insurance deal, but once you have spent $5,000, the insurance company covers all remaining expenses. So premium, deductible, max out of pocket, those three things. The reason those three things are what I want you to focus on is because my dad, working, diagnosed with lung cancer, has health insurance. He now knows how much financial protection that he has. What's going to happen is at some point, he's either going to continue that profession or he is no longer going to work. When he transitions from no longer working, he's going to have new options with his health insurance. And what is he going to need to review? How much do I pay and how much protection do I get? So payment and protection. So his first stop is going to be probably offered COBRA. COBRA is a continuation of the insurance that you've had from the employer. So same plan. The difference is the employer no longer pays their portion of the premium. So let's say he was paying $300 a month out of his paycheck and the insurance company the premium was like $1,000. That means his employer was actually paying $700 a month for his insurance. So now he's going to likely be responsible for a $1,000 a month bill. But you'll know that. In exchange for that, he's going to say, what's my deductible? What's my max out of pocket? Now, in the current environment, I don't know how long this will be reported for, so go with whatever you know as of today. In the current environment, we have the Affordable Care Act, which he could review those options. So I have a team in Winston-Salem I use. They serve not just North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, other states as well. It's called Sabres Marketing. I use them for all the Affordable Care Act stuff because they're just wizards with it. And I'll be the first to tell you, if you ask me a question in Q&A and I don't know it, I will say I don't know it, but I probably know somebody who does. So with Sabres, what they're going to do is they're going to run, are you eligible for any subsidies based on your income? Obviously, if my father is no longer working, his income has now changed. So he may qualify for a government subsidy. That is going to be circumstantial. You would want to ask someone specific. Don't ask me today because I won't know, but ask somebody specific to see if you qualify for a subsidy. That subsidy is going to lower his monthly premium and possibly his max out of pocket and deductible. But there's going to be a bunch of different plans to pick from. So now that we've narrowed it down to three things, premium, deductible, max out of pocket, now we kind of have to start considering network. So I'm not sure where everybody's at, but let's take the triad here, Greensboro, Winston-Salem area. You may want to receive care from a specialist at Wake Forest versus going to Cone or vice versa. There are Affordable Care Act plans that work very well at Wake Forest that you would not take to a doctor at Cone. It's just not good coverage. It's not going to be accepted, more expense to you. It's a nightmare. If you're going to Cone, you're not going to take your Cone plan to Wake Forest. Now, there's other plans you can pick that would offer both in the network, but it's going to change your premium, your deductible, and your max out of pocket. So that's kind of why I want to focus on those three, and then you have a little more flexibility as far as personal preference on choosing your network. So the only other thing I'll say about going from being employed and having employer insurance to not, we will review COBRA, Affordable Care Act. If you have a spouse, do check spousal benefits from their employer because you'll want to check. So if my spouse is going to continue to work, am I eligible to join their plan? And what's my premium, my max out of pocket and deductible on that insurance. So it's going to give you kind of three options of what to pick, and kind of boil it down, because if you start reading insurance contracts of 80% this, 20% there, 70% this, 60% that, your head will spin when you're starting to try to review too much. So try to boil it down to those three things. I will say, so I know we had some questions on Social Security disability, not my wheelhouse. I will tell you that up front. But what I can explain to you is after being on Social Security disability for about 24 months, you're going to be automatically enrolled through the Social Security Administration for Medicare Parts A and B. So when you're enrolled in Medicare A and B, you have a new insurance option. You can take original Medicare Parts A and B under the age of 65. So if you're not on Medicare disability, you don't qualify for Medicare until you're age 65, provided you work 40 quarters, paid into Social Security, yada, yada, yada. Or you can claim your spousal benefit. That's for another day. But for today's purposes, if you're disabled on Social Security disability for 24 months, you will be eligible for Medicare disability, automatically enrolled, and then you can pick original Medicare by itself. I will tell you up front, the Medicare networks nationwide, so previous scenario, Wake Forest and Cone are kind of the big guys up here. Maybe you want to go see a specialist at Duke and you live in Greensboro and not the Raleigh area. With original Medicare, you can go to Duke because it's a national network. As long as a doctor takes original Medicare, you can go to any doctor that takes Medicare. So it's anywhere in the country, not just specific to North Carolina. Where it starts getting specific to North Carolina is when you start injecting Medicare Advantage. So Medicare Advantage is sold geographically within your region, and this holds true pre-65 or post-65 for Medicare as an option. Medicare Advantage is sold by a private insurance company geographically to your location. So like the Affordable Care Act, you're going to have to deal with some networks, meaning you might have all your doctors at Cone or Wake Forest or Duke, depending on where you live. But if you want to travel from the Triad to Duke University, they may or may not accept your Medicare Advantage plan, where they may and likely do accept original Medicare. The reason those two are always pinned up against each other is because Medicare Advantage comes from a private insurance company, and a Medicare A and B, those parts, original Medicare, is from the federal government. So the federal government insurance is an 80-20 insurance, meaning Medicare pays 80%, you would be responsible for 20%. Here's the big negative to just original Medicare. It is 20% unlimited. Simple math, hypothetical scenario, $100,000 surgery, you owe $20,000. That is why most people will add a Medicare supplement. So with a Medicare supplement, it is from a private insurance company. It's secondary to Medicare, meaning you still have Medicare's national network. Medicare pays their 80%, and then that 20% remainder in a Plan G, for example, would be sent from Medicare to the private insurance company, and they would pick up all remaining charges after Medicare's deductible, which for the year, this year, is $203. So let me try to make it a little more specific to cancer treatments, if you don't mind. So let's take chemotherapy, for example. Chemotherapy would be approved by Medicare because you have a medical condition that warrants it. It would be a 20% co-insurance. So Medicare would pay 80%. You would be responsible for 20%, and that would be unlimited. However, if you add the supplement, you would pay Medicare's deductible of $203 for the year, and the supplement would be required by law to pick up the 20% co-insurance because Medicare approved those charges. If Medicare does not approve the charges, the supplement does not have to pay, but that happens with things that are like cosmetic or just things that weren't coded correctly. So I have an example for that, but for the sake of time, let me hold it unless somebody has a serious question about that at the end. I'll use a cataract example on what Medicare wouldn't pay for. So the most coverage you can get under 65 and post 65, as far as flexibility, really getting that financial protection, it's going to be original Medicare and a Medicare supplement, in my opinion. The negative for that is under the age of 65, you have qualified for Medicare disability. Medicare supplement premiums in North Carolina, they are based on age and some other factors. This is just a general to give you a picture, so don't quote me on this, is about $400 to $450 a month. and you still have to pay Medicare Part B premium, which is about $147.50 unless you have an IRMA adjustment, whole nother story for another day. So you're looking at about $500 to $600 a month in coverage, but you have only a $203 out-of-pocket expense for the year on the medical side of things when Medicare approves the charges. So what I want everyone to kind of know is if you are on disability for 24 months, do consider Medicare, do consider the supplement. There are no health questions to get the Medicare supplement when you first turn on Medicare Part B. And when you turn 65, you do not have to pass any medical questions to get a different Medicare supplement, because at 65, you have another initial election period is what it's called. And there are no health questions for you to change, in your premium in this area. 65-year-old females about $100-ish per month. So the price of the supplement drops significantly once you turn 65. The version of that, or something to consider, is, okay, I'll give up some flexibility as far as networks because Medicare Advantage is more restrictive on the networks. I got to play by that plan's rules, but they don't charge me $400 to $450 a month under the age of 65. I still have to pay Medicare Part B premium, $147.50 per month, but I can enroll in Medicare Advantage. I will typically not pay an additional premium, and my max out of pocket will be somewhere to $3,400, $510-ish thousand per year. There's a bunch of different plans. You can actually use Medicare.gov. So I'm independent. I don't have any loyalty to these insurance companies. My loyalty is to you folks. So you can use www.medicare.gov. It's the same website I use to run prescriptions and all of that. You can plug in your zip code. They have a plan, Part D drug plan finder tool right on the front page of the website. You can click that, put in your zip code, plug in the prescriptions that you take. It'll run all the drug plans available in your area. It'll also run all Medicare Advantage plans available to you in your area, and has the 1-800 number to call them, or you can enroll right on Medicare.gov, and it cuts insurance agents out completely. It's a little intuitive as far as it takes some time to get used to using it. If you would like my help, you can send me an email. I think Lynn's going to share that with you. I will happily run your stuff on Medicare's website and send it back to you. I'm not licensed in all 52 states, but Medicare.gov works anywhere in the country. So I can do that one pretty easy. But I would tell you that when you turn 65, you can go from Medicare Advantage to a supplement with no health questions as well. So some people will say, I can't afford $450 a month and a supplement premium. But what I can do is pay no additional premium, meaning I still pay Medicare Part B, $147.50 right now is the base premium. And then when I turn 65, I know I can get a supplement for about $100-150 per month. But the crux of it, because that's a lot at once, so that's like drinking from a fire hose. But I wanted to, I see a question there too. I might catch that at the end just for flow. The crux of what to understand about Medicare is the national Medicare program is parts A and B. That unlimited cap as far as what you get for financial protection is unlimited, meaning it is 20% to the ceiling and beyond. So if you're not going to buy a Medicare supplement, that is fine. Understand that switching to Medicare Advantage will restrict your network. You're going to a private insurance company, not the government. By going with the private insurance company, you can limit your maximum out of pocket to $3,400, $5,000, $10,000. It just depends on what plan you pick. But now you got to play by that plan's rules. Once you turn 65, you can re-enroll in anything you want, no health questions. After you turn 65, if you want to change your Medicare supplement, you have to pass the health questions in order to switch. So that gives people usually get a little irked by Medicare supplement or health questions in general. When it comes to cancer specifically, each company will address that a little differently. When it's in remission, you've been cleared for 2, 3, 4 years. Some companies will still accept you. If you're receiving ongoing treatments, Medicare supplements don't have to necessarily accept you. And each company is a little different on that. So I wanted to kind of hit Medicare a little bit more than the Affordable Care Act and things of that nature in COBRA, because all of that is so personal as far as like, where do you work? Where do you live? What does your employer offer? There's no way I can really nail that down for you on this call, but Medicare is a little more general because it's offered to everybody at 65, and you may actually qualify pre-65. So to kind of simple it again, original Medicare A and B, after 24 months of disability insurance from Social Security, you do qualify for Medicare. You should be automatically enrolled by Social Security. And then you have the option to elect Medicare Advantage or buy a Medicare supplement under the age of 65 with no health questions. Once you turn 65, you have that option again, as it is today, where you can get a Medicare supplement or Medicare Advantage, no health questions. I should mention that once you're over the age of 65, October 15th through December 7th, you get blasted with Change Your Medicare Plan. That has to deal with Medicare Advantage and the prescription drug plan program. Prescription drug plan coverage and Medicare Advantage do not have any health questions post 65. So you can re-enroll in that rabbit wheel each and every year because the plans change each and every year. Medicare supplements have been standardized since Medicare came around in the 60s. They don't change, they're federally required so to be the same. So if you look at a Plan G, for example, that coverage is set as a Plan G. So it doesn't matter if it's the company with a Blue Shield or ARP or whoever, Humana, all of them, Cigna, Aetna, wherever you're at. When you see 15, 20 companies that sell a Plan G Medicare supplement, they are all the exact same except for the price. They all like to charge you a different price. So the easiest way to explain what an independent broker does is I sell for 15 or 20 of them. So if you want a Plan G, here's the top 5 or 6 in your area, pick which one you'd like because they're the exact same and they all pay me the same commission. So it's really no different to me as long as you have the best price. So only caution about insurance companies, make sure it's A-rated. Standard & Poor's or whoever you trust as a rating system, always get an A-rated insurance company. They're rated based on their claims paying ability as far as financials, as well as customer service. So always encourage you to deal with A-rated. B-rated companies can be a little less expensive, but they just make me a little leery. So I would always encourage you, whether that's life insurance, long-term care. I know Mr. Smith was talking about all that. So always verify it's an A-rated company. I think that's going to hit it as far as getting a lot of information out on insurance for you. I will say a couple of useful tidbits for you. So let's shift gears away from just insurance and let's focus on, hey, how can I kind of help myself? So first one would be Medicare.gov. If you're over 65 or you've been on disability for 24 months, do use that as a resource. Tons of information there. Same with SSI.gov, the Social Security Administration. It will walk you through. They have little PDF files you can download of checklists that you need to qualify for disability. Tons of information on those 2 government websites. Make sure it is .gov. It's .com, run, but .gov can help you out. I think one of the main things that people kind of focus on when it comes to health insurance is I don't want my medical bills to be a burden to my family. I just worked with my estate planning attorney, Rob Brown. We do estate planning workshops. We had one just last week and a lady comes in with stage 4 cervical cancer and she's just burdened by, I don't want my treatment and medical bills to be who I'm living with or my family members' burden. Every state's a little different. So check your state on this, but typically, as long as you don't have anyone co-signing for any debt, your medical bills are nobody's problem. We've always heard the old adage, if you can't take your money with you when you go, your debt doesn't go with you either. So I would always encourage people to be a little relieved. Don't be burdened by the financial aspect of it. The reason we're using health insurance and we want to make wise decisions on the plan that we have is to not disrupt the lifestyle you currently have any more than it already is. So the goal of the insurance isn't trying to, not life insurance and things like that. Yes, we're transferring wealth on the back end. But right now, I don't want you to feel burdened by the medical bills as far as leaving that debt and it being a burden in the future. We don't want it to be a burden now or in the future. So I'm glad those of you have tuned in. You've tuned in because you want to make wise decisions. So thank you, Dusty and Lynn, for putting that together. And hopefully you feel championed, you feel good about making wise decisions. The other thing I'll tell you is I have another client about to have open heart surgery. So he knows the max out of pocket in his Affordable Care Act plan is $8,500. So he went to the billing department or whatever, financial aid department, whatever it's called at the hospital. And actually they gave him a chart that says, if you maxed out your policy and you owe us $8,500, here's the monthly installment plan for interest-free payments for the next 2 years. So in his particular case, he was able to know in advance prior to surgery, the max in his plan is $8,500. He's going to max it out with open heart surgery. And he's already received the chart from the hospitals showing where he's going to owe $354 a month for the next 24 months to pay off that debt. But it is interest-free. So he's already able to proactively establish and budget for the plan prior to his care. So if you're having a surgery or if you're dealing with a hospital, know, again, what's the max out of pocket and deductible, you know how much it's going to cost you in advance. So don't hesitate to be proactive and reach out to the medical facility and ask for their installment plan on interest-free payments, because ultimately it's to give you peace of mind. We don't want you going into a surgery caring about anything other than your health. So the idea is the more you can put in front of you and get checked off the list, or have a family member do it on your behalf, just get that stuff out of the way so you can just focus on healing and recovery. And the last thing, Rob has a resource for you. Great guy, Stigall and Clifford here, and there's a law firm here in Greensboro. He's shot over, and I'll send this to you, Lynn, to send out here in North Carolina. So check with your state, but here in North Carolina, there is a free healthcare power of attorney form. So when it comes to estate planning, whether you do the full-on estate plan, wills and trust and all of that, I highly recommend getting that stuff in place. But sometimes we're on a time crunch, or sometimes we get hit out of left field with some life. So when life hits you out of left field, a free resource for you is this North Carolina government healthcare power of attorney form. It's the same one that Rob uses. You can download it. The reason he uses it is because all the doctors have seen it, because it's a standard form. But you can download it right off the North Carolina government website, fill it out. You just need 2 witnesses and have it notarized. And you can go ahead and have whoever's going to make the decisions for your healthcare if you become incapacitated or something like that. All the legalities are already in place, because kind of like wills and trust, I'm not going to get into that rabbit hole because we're talking insurance, but the last thing you want is to have a medical situation and the court system get involved. So I think it's always worth saying, if you become incapacitated on the surgical table or something like that, and those things are not in place, do understand that your family members have to go to court and essentially sue you saying you're incapacitated, so someone can then be appointed to make decisions for you. And you just don't want to be dealing with that when you're trying to get healthy. So Lynn, I will get that link over to you so you can email it out to everybody. Again, it's a free form. It has to do with healthcare power of attorney. So we're not talking insurance here. This is a legal document. I am not an attorney. This is not legal advice, all those disclosures. But if there's anything as far as a free resource, I want you all to have it. And all it requires is 2 witnesses and a notary, which I know like the postal UPS will do it. Some banks will do notaries. If you're in Greensboro, just call Rob over at Stigall and Clifford, and they'll book you an appointment to come in. They will notarize it for free for you. So that's taken care of if you're here in the Triad. So just tell them Jeremy sent you. He's a good guy. But in short, guys, if you're working, premium and protection. What do I pay? What protection am I getting in return? Max out of pocket and deductibles will show you that. You can get into your co-insurance as far as what it's going to cost you in between those 2 numbers. But I would say focus on those 3 things, and that'll kind of give you a barometer for gauging Affordable Care Act, COBRA, Medicare, when all these things come up. And you cannot continue COBRA if you age into 65. COBRA no longer good. You've got to take Medicare. If you are still working, you can defer Medicare at age 65, but that's going to be a case-by-case basis. So we can help you with that if you would like it.